Well, there's need to look at elections, litigations, and democratic governance in Nigeria with the whole aim of deepening democracy in the country. And joining me to have this very robust discussion, starting from my immediate left, I have a public affairs analyst and, of course, an esquire, and a person of Nuruddin Asunogie. Thanks for joining me, Nuruddin.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, viewers.
Okay, just beside Alhaji Nuruddin, I have another distinguished esquire and a person of Joshua Abolagba. Thanks for joining me, Joshua.
Thank you very much.
Oh, well, a whole lot has been said concerning elections, you know, and every 4 years it's expected that we have elections being conducted, you know, in Nigeria, looking at state elections, national elections, and all of this have really thrown up with all issues concerning litigations. And some have said, well, litigations to a whole extent seem to gradually corrode the power of the people on the ballot, because each time the people take a decision on the ballot, it's later upturned by the court. Well, looking at this, let's start with you, Nuruddin Asunogie. A lot has been said concerning huge litigations in the country, and even the CGN, Justice Olukayode Ariwola, said that Nigeria is one of the most litigious countries of the world. What do you say concerning these comments?
Well, perhaps it is a reflection of the reality about us now, except if we choose to live within a lie. We can't possibly run away from this. When people feel shortchanged, whether genuinely or imaginary, they will be looking for where to ventilate that. And the only civil way to do that, of course, is that you take to litigation. What it had been over the time is that the judiciary offers a blanket of warmth, so to speak, for, in the winter of despondency, discombobulation, and confusion. So when you are, as it were, held hostage by that paralyzing cold, it is the judiciary that offered the blanket of warmth. And so people are naturally going to gravitate towards that. And again, we do not have the culture of accepting that a contest, because the stakes are high, because of that reality that the stakes are high, people do not necessarily want to embrace the fact that the possibility of losing is there. If you go into a context, what is required for one who has embraced humility is to say, it is possible for me to win, and it is possible for me not to win. So whatever the outcome is, when you do an honest interrogation of what that outcome is, you are most likely not going to take the step of saying, let me approach the court. He had become a hero today and needs to be, he's been celebrated the world over. He created a niche for himself. What made Jonathan unique was not the 6 years. Whatever it was he did or failed to do have paid into insignificance just because of one singular whatever. He has become an iconic leader. The man who said, yes, even when I had the right, as it were, to approach the court to challenge the outcome of 2015 election, he wasn't going to do so. Why was it possible for Jonathan? Because Jonathan took possession of himself. Jonathan did not hypothecate the right he had to make decision about a matter that principally concerned him. And so before anybody could get close to him to influence Jonathan, Jonathan said, I submit. Because what was primary was the fact that the country, like he had repeatedly said, was what was of a primary importance. For as long as my contestation was going to jeopardize or compromise the integrity of this society, I am ready to capitulate what was personal, what was selfish, to the overall good. So it didn't mean that if he had approached the court, he may not have gotten victory. But he looked at it. Why do I rock the boat? Just, I have been there, and I have done my quota. So if the outcome is said to be a reflection of my rejection, Absolutely no problem.
That's quite iconic, coming from the articulate Malam Nuruddin Asunoge, where we may call that a tip of the iceberg. We're going to be taking a short break, and I assure you, after this break, we'll fire on all cylinders on the discussion. To stay.
Every opinion counts.
Yeah, good to have you join us again. I did say we're going to be quickly taking a short break, after which we get to the discussion proper. And while we had a break, we had the opportunity to be joined by a public affairs analyst in the person of Omogbe I14. Thanks for coming, Omogbe.
Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, while we quickly go on the issues before us, they always say that the political parties heading to the courts for settling of election disputes is not actually unnecessarily pregnant to orderly conduct and, of course, due process. But they say it's better to jaw in the court than to war. But let's look at what you have to say in that regard, Joshua, because a lot has been said that technicalities are involved in adjudication of cases. In the process of adjudicating cases, the technicalities could turn a lie to becoming truth by verifiable evidence we call facts. How do you do this in the law court?
Yes, with regards to stating that evidence or adjudication may turn truth into lies in court.
Or a lie into a truth.
I actually disagree with you on that because actually speaking, with regards to facts, they are what they call facts and they are what they call truth. So in a situation whereby there is seen to be facts and those facts may or may not be in tandem with the truth, then that's when the masses begin to squabble and then make comments. But then again, we should also know that in Nigeria particularly, I keep on saying it in any platform I have, that Nigerians are a set of persons who do not really look into the law books. For crying out loud, each individual in Nigeria ought to be in possession of the Constitution. You can easily go to a bookshop and get the Constitution, a hard copy, or even still, better still, download the soft copy of the Constitution into your phone and then just glance through one of these days. And even if you're looking at sections that you don't really understand, or you're looking at something, you want to check something in the Constitution, you can easily Google it and it takes you directly to that section, and then you check and read it out and then understand it. If you don't understand it too well, you can approach a lawyer to explain it to you. But in Nigeria, for example, we don't do that. So most times when people come out, it is just what they hear on social media that they use to judge. And the court is not swayed by social media or social antics. That's one thing we should always take note of. The court is swayed by your ability or the ability of your counsel to table facts, evidential facts, that can make your case to be seen to have a positive, or make your case to be seen to have a positive aspect to it. So in a situation whereby there are adjudications and then the court has tabled both matters, they have looked at both sides and then they now give a verdict, definitely somebody will always be vexed or will always be, not be happy with the outcome, because it's a two-way thing. So there will always be a winner, quote and unquote. So in a situation whereby the other party doesn't win, then the other party will now take to the social media to now be complaining or doing that instead of going to court. What they ought to do is that if you are aggrieved at a certain aspect or a certain judgment, you should take your grievances to the next court, to the appellate court. So in a situation whereby, for example, when you talk about technicalities, let me just touch on that a little bit. When you talk about technicalities, for example, there is the aspect of the pre-election matters, since we're talking about election adjudication now. There's the aspect of pre-election matters, and there's the aspect of fielding persons that are qualified. So in a situation whereby someone fields a candidate who is not qualified to run for that election, then when the ticket is no longer complete again, that can be a ground for them to set aside the election. So in a situation whereby someone fields a candidate, or rather, even when you go to court to adjudicate over a matter, and then you are joining a party who is not supposed to be joined, that's what they call misjoinder of parties. That can also cause a problem in your suit. So the technicalities, when they say technicalities, there are some aspects of whereby they make errors in their filing and in doing such things that might not even be inimical to the overall case. So the court might now border on those technicalities to even knock out the case before we talk about the major aspect of the case.
Okay, I think we'll be coming there because a whole lot we can say, though it's past now when we look at the verdict of the PEPT, but a whole lot to savor or to criticize in all of this. We're going to be going back there as I pan question to Malam Nuruddin. But before that, let's get your bite, Omorogbe. We've had litigations. We're still having it. And aggrieved political parties and their candidates are heading to the Supreme Court, although we hear reports of the Supreme Court on fire. We don't know how that's going to unsettle. But let's look at your bite in terms of our electoral process and the huge, humongous litigations we keep having, where the CGN, Ariwola, said that Nigeria is one of the most litigious countries of the world. Do you see that as helping out in our electoral process?
Thank you very much once again, Philip, for having me. In Nigeria today, like you have rightly said, the issue of might be pre-election cases or post-election anyway. But I feel that it has to do with our desperation as a nation, as individuals.
Okay.
Whereby when it's so obvious that you have lost an election, you tend not to agree to accepting the outcome of elections. But on the other
when it's so obvious, you said?
Yes, when it's obvious.
Where technicalities can prove that you really won.
But even at that.
We've seen cases where popularly Nigerians say that a particular candidate won. But in the case of having litigations, the court upturns it.
Yes. Actually, I think it still has to do with our desperation too.
Oh, as politicians, you mean?
Yes, yes, yes. Not the electorate, okay. You and I mean the desperation of the candidates or the...
Okay. We'll quickly take a short break, after which you continue on that. We just stay.
Every opinion counts.
Yeah, quickly, let's get your discussion, your bite on that, Mr. Omorogbe.
I was saying that the issue of most times, especially during after elections, presidential or governorship election, we have noticed a situation whereby it is now a constant in this country that after the verdict as announced by the electoral body, the next step is to go to court. It's becoming a recurring decimal in this country. Now it kind of is now becoming a norm, a kind of this is how it is. But in other jurisdictions, you see that most candidates will always accept the outcome of elections, like what happened in the US, Trump against Clinton, the female Clinton I'm talking about. You see a situation whereby there were some conflicts or some kind of a misconception during the release of the election. But when the election result was finally released, irrespective of the controversy we all noticed, we discovered that in a few hours, Hillary Clinton came out and congratulated Trump. But the situation where in Nigeria here, you see our candidates, because of their huge amount of money they've invested in the election, you find that it is difficult for them to always accept the outcome. They will fight tooth and nail to make sure even after the lower court has given verdict, they still go further to Supreme Court and all that. I still feel it has to do with the desperation of our candidates or our electoral, the candidates.
Okay.
You know. So on the other hand, we look at some, even before elections, we have seen cases where if, for example, myself and Barrister will belong to a particular party, you see us even going to court before primaries or even after primaries, even from the same home. Like I always said, we will not have a conducive environment when it comes to election in this country until some of the incentives, some of the outrageous gains in governance is taken away. Because it's becoming a kind of a routine, like I said earlier.
A recurring decimal.
Yes, like I said earlier, that we will always experience some of these things because it's not really good for our democracy. Recently we have seen that in any election, it is even the judiciary now that is now in the position to start giving us governors, House of Rep members, and all that.
Contrary to what it should have been.
Like I told my wife last night, I said, maybe we just have to go away with election and ask the judicial arm of government to start selecting or choosing candidates for us, because our going to the polls most times doesn't really count anymore.
Well, as you still have the floor, you made mention of the fact that desperation on the part of politicians to some extent also make these litigations to thrive. Now, let's look at the aspect where we draw a nexus between electoral process, that is transparent. If an electoral process is transparent, do you see litigations coming up as the way we have it? Don't you think there's a nexus between the electoral process not being transparent and the litigations we see?
You have said it all. That is another aspect. I was even going to that or coming to that. Until we start to have a transparent and credible process of conducting elections, these litigations will continue to reoccur, because you see a situation whereby even in the side of the electoral umpire, as the case may be, most of them will see some litigation, some kind of court cases, even before any election. This issue of one particular person forging results and all that.
As alleged.
As alleged. As at that level. They will still continue or go further to still conduct the election, knowing fully well that there's already a clause in the whole stuff. Like I have always said, most pre-election cases ought to have be ended. They ought to end before election takes place.
A lot you also said, and that brings back to what we left off from Barrister Joshua Abolagba. Malam Nuruddin, the pendulum is swinging to your direction. Now, you did a little smile when I said that, the aspect where truth is corroded or a lie becomes truth, because there seem to be verifiable facts in terms of technicalities in the law court. Some have said that lawyers have a way, to adjudicate cases to a point where what isn't really truth, is giving some shade of truth involving technicalities, where people who really didn't win election as perceived by the people or a segment of the people, turn out to become winners by the law court. How do you describe this?
Well, thank you. I'm reminded of the story of the blind men who were inspecting the elephant. Each one of them was describing the elephant on the basis of what side of the elephant they were. And all of that represented the truth. And so when you say truth being converted to falsehood or falsehood to truth vice versa, it will depend on what side of the divide you are standing.
Okay.
You called me Nuruddin Asunugi. Asunugi Nuruddin and Nuruddin Asunugi are not one and the same person in the face of the law.
Wow.
And so once that point is brought out by a lawyer, we need to respect that fact. I'll give you one example. Like my brother said, Joshua, we have the belief that because some categories of persons have capacity for noise making, therefore the amount of noise that have been made will translate ultimately to be truth.
Oh.
I was one of those who had said that the judiciary was compromised when Justice Ikomi was put on trial. A lady had come to testify in court, because in law, hearsay evidence not admissible. But when it is one of dying declaration, it becomes admissible. And so the lady said, I am a neighbor to the judge, and I heard the constable who got killed in the justice house shout, cried, oh, Oga has killed me. In the imagination of any person, Oga was the judge.
Okay.
As it then was, TMI the law took up the defense and he was discharged and acquitted. Before that acquittance, he had been cashiered as a judge of Bende State. Babangida, who was holding Sweden, had sacked him. When the robbers who were in Justice Ikomi's house to wreak havoc, who went there on a revenge mission because he had sentenced to death, were confessing, they said, we went there and we did the killing, not Justice Ikomi. Stories were bandied around that in his bedroom we saw bloodstains. That was how he killed his wife before. These stories were told. And it turned out to be that the Oga the constable referred to was the AC in charge of operation. He had just come back from an operation and was just in the station to drop his weapons and return home. The Oga saw him say, we don't have somebody who will provide security in Justice Ikomi's house. Please, you go. Say, Oga, I'm not on duty. Say, I will compensate you. Please go.
Oh, yeah.
If he had not asked him to go, he probably would not have died. But perhaps time and event needed to synchronize for what happened to happen.
Yeah.
But for that confession, we would have heard to it that how was a brother judge going to sentence his brother judge to death. That was what freed him. But unfortunately, his career was already truncated. Yeah. He had the competence. He was so cerebral a judge that he probably would have become the CJN of this country. But he ended up a miserable judge who was retired. The only glory was that my name was free. So when we say XYZ had happened, if I approach the court, for example, and I say, Philip is not the owner of the suit he's wearing, I have a responsibility, burden of proof is on me, how you are not the owner. If you say, oh, Joshua sold it to me, and Joshua comes out to say, yes, I sold it to him, and I'm unable to bring somebody who would say, he sold to me or he made it for me, and the court decides on the fact before it that you are the owner, even when, in fact, everybody knows you stole it from me, how do you hold the court culpable?
Exactly.
So
that's where justice may be denied.
So you won't say it's justice that is denied, because as far as that explains why they tell you that justice
the facts are not available.
Justice is blind. So if you are certain,
justice is blind.
If you are certain, you have a responsibility to prove that which you have asserted. If you say, I was robbed of victory, you have the responsibility. But like the example he gave, the overall vote that took place between Hillary Clinton and Trump, Clinton had the majority of the vote, but the Electoral College gave the victory to Trump. Clinton did not even approach the court. In the case of George Bush Jr. and Al Gore, there were discrepancies, there were manipulations that were said were studiously done to favor Bush. He went to the court, but there was a time frame within which the issue was to be resolved. When he ran out of time, he was returned. Bush was returned as the winner. So you don't hold the judiciary responsible for the inadequacies. If take the case of Enugu State, there is already a decided case by the Supreme Court that the NYSC certificate is not a requirement for qualification to run for an election. And so a lawyer files processes in court. And one of the grounds for asking that the election of the governor be voided is the fact that he had a fake or a forged certificate. And so when the court says you are coming at a time when you ought not to come, you say, we have not gotten justice. Oh, the court is biased. The court has been compromised. Compromised by who? And so it takes a whole lot of pressure is brought. There is the absence of internal democracy. And so you approach the court. That was the point the CJN was making, that you find that a larger chunk of the cases that the courts are now deciding are cases that ought not to come to the court ab initio.
Okay.
If the political parties have done what was right. And so you are asking the judiciary to be the judiciary to still be the body that will come and regulate the political parties, regulate the umpire. I mean, you'll be asking for too much from the judiciary.
Okay, but do you agree that what we have, the huge amount of litigations we have in courts in Nigeria today, is as a result of the electoral process not being transparent? Otherwise,
so when you say not being transparent, let me tell you, when you say not being transparent,
enough,
except people choose to be economical with the truth, vote buying will not be done by INEC. Recruitment of persons to practice thuggery, ballot snatching, will not be done by INEC. To promote religion, bigotry, and ethnicity is not done by INEC. It's done by the contestants. And so when you find a contestant who tells you ab initio that we worship in the same mosques, so why would you vote for one who is not a Muslim? You find the one who tells you, oh, we worship in the same church. It is time for us to take over what belongs to us.
Religious sentiments.
How do you hold INEC responsible when people begin to respond along that line? How do you hold the judiciary responsible for such whatever? So when you say there is no transparency, who is responsible for the opacity that you speak about? INEC, the judiciary? The answer, of course, is no. These are the political whatever gladiators who do all of this, and they only would complain. I contest an election in my stronghold. All that I have there is excellent, wonderful, and so I get victory. I'll give you one clear example. When Oshomole contested against Osumbo, he approached the court. Oshomole approached the court, queried the results from the area where Osumbo was declared as the winner. And so, leave was granted Oshomole to investigate, to interrogate all of what took place there. When Osumbo and his lawyer, Osumbo, he's a professor of law, a deeply cerebral lawyer. When Osumbo was approaching the court, Osumbo considered what happened in the area where Oshomole won as sacrosanct. So they never went that way. The area that the court now asked that should be examined, where the area, because the court will not go outside the pleadings of parties. Oshomole said, I wanted to see what the vote was like. And so when they got there, they saw votes they saw multiple votes and all that. It's not unlikely that in the area where Oshomole had sway, if Osumbo had applied to court to say, I want to equally look at the votes that were recorded there, you probably would have seen multiple votes. Yeah. And so that never happened. Would you blame the outcome, even if it turned out later that we went back to conduct a research and discovered that there were multiple votings in the local government areas where Oshomole won? Would you blame that on court? Court was not to prepare Osumbo's case or any of the parties' case. The case you have brought before the court is what the court sits down and looks at, and looks at it dispassionately. The court is not going to, even if a judge had participated and had witnessed a crime, the very moment he sits as a judge, he completely obliterates all that he knew about what had happened. He's dealing with what is before. If he wants to say, I saw what happened, he must go to the witness box, testify, and will be subjected to barrage of cross-examination. Until and unless that is done, he cannot so much to begin to use, except he is taking cognizance of the law in deciding issues. Even when those parties have been blind to those aspects of the law, that could be permissible. But for you to purvey facts that will aid any of the parties, you need to come to the witness box and you'll be cross-examined. So when you say transparency of a process, hold those who are complaining as responsible for what they are complaining about. It is the political actors. And no one of them is immaculate. Everybody does it where he's strongest. For the Labour Party in the East, where they were strongest, they did what they could do. For the PDP, where they were strongest, they did what they could do. For the APC, where they were strongest, they did what they could do. So it was a theater of criminality, a theater of barbarity, depending on who was in charge, who occupied the space. So the complaint is that oh, you got far more than I got. You had cheated me, or you had, you know. So for you to say that there was any one of them who came without the hands soiled, that will be far from the truth.
Well, a lot we must say must be done there, and the judiciary has helped to a great extent to unravel facts in this direction. But let's look at the aspect where technicalities may also abound, like the PPT verdict over the 25% controversy that threw a lot of issues up. How do you see our democracy, and what do you think should be done, you know, in the process in order to have less litigations, as we have issues about Abuja, the FCT being the 37th state? Joshua.
With regards to the 25%, as soon as, even when the election was conducted, even before the elections were conducted, we knew that some of us knew and we believed, but we were waiting for the courts to give a definite verdict on that aspect of technicalities, as they will couch it. Because first of all, I keep on saying it, those are saying FCT is not a state or has higher power over other states. On what basis are you saying that? The people there in FCT, they have just one vote, as we also have one vote. So if you are not saying that those in the FCT should be given should place on a higher pedestal, then you are being, you know, you are not being, you are not showing equity.
Okay, so you concur with the verdict. You concur with the verdict.
Totally,
okay.
Because at the end of the day, you should know that the Constitution expressly states with regards to the governorship election and presidential election.
Okay, in 1 minute, go over how we can reduce litigations in terms of getting it right in our electoral process.
I believe INEC should play its part to ensure that elections are done credibly. And when they say they will transmit elections as soon as possible, they should do that. Also, political parties and political candidates who are running for election should try as much as possible to not heat up the polity by throwing in words which have to do with ethnicity or religiosity.
Like what Malam Nuruddin said.
Those are not going to take us anywhere. Because first of all, when you win as the president or the governor, you have to, you have to govern over everybody, both Christians and Muslims, Northerners and Southerners.
Okay.
So we should put that into cognizance.
I take that as a final comment in the discussion. Let's get to a final comment in the discussion, Omorogbe, as regards living this whole madness of too much litigations in court.
Like I said earlier, I still want to reiterate the issue of the lucrative nature in our electoral offices, I think should be addressed.
Oh.
That is where the problem lies.
So it's too attractive.
It's too attractive. What will you expect somebody that sells like 3 or 4 buildings to contest an election, and at the end of the day he loses? You just expect him to just go to the podium to congratulate his opponent? Until there should be a legislation to regularize, to allow these people in public offices live normal lives. They are not living normal lives. They are demigods. You need to see the way they portray themselves after election, after swearing in. So I think that aspect is most sacrosanct. If we are talking about the issue of political parties to do this, INEC should do that. But for the simple fact that the lucrative nature, what you get when you are elected as House of Rep member or as a governor, for 3 days, it's enough for you. It's enough take home for you. And this issue of after litigation, when you lose a case in an election, there should be consequences. I want to bring in this example when Osumbo was booted out of office and Oshomole came. He still be addressed as ex-governor. You were disgraced out of office, and you still have the pension. You are still collecting pension. So those are areas.
So that benefit shouldn't have been there
at all. And
okay.
There ought to have been consequences. Not you just lose a case in court out of your own visible or clear fact, by way of maybe you have forged a result and all that. They will remove you and put me there. You will still go with all your entitlements.
All right.
Every 4 years or 3 years, they'll still be giving you jeeps, pension, house in Abuja, those things should be looked into.
Okay, going forward, what do you see as your final comments on this, Malam Nuruddin, in getting it right? We understand that through litigations that we're going to be having a lot in terms of bringing respite in the direction of explaining what the law is all about in terms of where really shady, and that's actually the act of the judiciary. But in 1 minute, round off.
If we must get it right, we must find the intrepidity to say no to those who seek public office just to gratify their audacious proclivities. This then CBN governor, former emir of Kano, had said then, and I'm sure it's worse now, 469 is that number that takes over 25% of the resources that is budgeted every year. That is the one that is seen. You can't talk about the one that is not being seen. Now the Nigerians who are quarreling across board, whether on religious line and other, go to the same filling station now to buy for 600 and something plus and all that, because we need to remove subsidy. When the fact of the matter, it is the political class, the subsidization of the political class is what we needed to address.
Even though we still hear that subsidy,
it's not going to go because the cartel are there, they will not let it go. And you know why the problem will continue? It's a global phenomenon.
Okay.
Those who decide who rules are the corporate world.
Okay, thank you so much, Malam Nuruddin. Thank you. Big thanks to you, Omorogbe, I141, and of course, Joshua Abulagba. Well, this is where we culminate a wrap for the discussion in Benin Network Center.